Hello again. This is Lydia Ford right back at you. I help people who are stuck in grief to get unstuck, and my grief counseling business is called Grace to Win because I see you as a winner. I see you as victorious. I see you not as a survivor or one just coping, just barely making it as a result of losing a loved one, but I see you victorious. I see you as Christ sees you, as not just a conqueror, but more than a conqueror. And so today I'm back to talk to you again about grief and loss and the experience of grief and loss. And last time in our last live, we talked about the physical sensations associated with grief. Yes, there are physical manifestations, physical sensations that a grieving person can go through when they are going through the death experience, the death of a loved one. And these are some of the physical sensations that many grief counselors see when they do their grief counseling. We talked about 9 of them. I'm just going to review them, and then I'm going to go on to the next topic. We talked about hollowness in the stomach. Number 1, tightness in the chest. Number 2, tightness in the throat, oversensitivity to noise, a sense of depersonalization, breathlessness or feeling short of breath is 6, weakness in the muscles is 7, 8, lack of energy, and 9, dry mouth. And those are physical sensations that not everybody experiences all 9, but many candidates, many counselees do experience several of these physical manifestations. And so right now, we're going to talk about cognition. Cognition has to do with the mind, what you think. How are you thinking? Are you thinking healthily, correctly, or do you have stinking thinking? Cognitions, what our thought patterns say or believe or think about what you're going through when you hear about the death of your loved one or when you're in the midst of experiencing grief. And so that word is cognitions. There are many different thought patterns that mark the experience of grief. Certain thoughts are common and normal, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about normal reactions that most of us experience when we go through the grief period, when we're going through mourning. Certain thoughts are common in the early stages of grieving and usually disappear after a short time. But sometimes thoughts persist and trigger feelings that can lead to depression and anxiety. And so one of those thought processes, one of those cognitions, thinking patterns is what we call disbelief. And let me help you. With most of us, when we hear about the death of someone that we are close to, our first inclination is in disbelief. Disbelief. It doesn't matter if the person died suddenly or if that person, it was anticipated, that person was terminally ill. They were in hospice and then they died while they were in hospice. They might have been given 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a couple of days. But watch this. When you hear it, sometimes you can still be in disbelief. All right. So we say things like, it didn't happen. There must be a mistake. I can't believe it happened. Even though the doctor said he had this much time or they had that much time, or if that person just died suddenly, airplane crash, car crash, walking across the street, got hit by a car. Most of the time we're in shock and disbelief. All right. And sometimes we'll say, I don't want to believe that it happened, but it happened. These are often the first thoughts to occur again after hearing of a death, especially if the death was sudden. Oh man, are you serious? Are you kidding me? I can't believe that happened. That must be a mistake. Okay. One young widow said, and I'm reading from my book. So one young widow said, and this is the author, her author's name, by the way, is William Warden. So one young widow said to the author of this book, I keep waiting for someone to wake me and tell me I'm dreaming. Anybody ever say that when you hear about the death of a loved one? I'm waiting for somebody to knock me upside the head or hit me in the head, wake me up, because I can't believe it. Maybe someone said the passing of my husband came as a shock, although he had been sick for some time. And guess what? You are never quite ready for it. I don't know about you, but I was not quite ready. My husband was in the hospital, diagnosed with lung cancer, terminal lung cancer, no radiation, no chemo. He went into the hospital on October 3rd in 2011. Okay, we celebrated our 37th anniversary on the 5th. My son Trevor had his 27th birthday on the 17th. My husband had his 60th birthday on the 21st. My son was engaged to get married on the 18th of November, which was just about another 5 or 6 weeks later. And then my husband died suddenly from a heart attack. We were not expecting that. We thought that it was the cancer that was going to take him out, but he suddenly had a heart attack. And we only asked for one DNR. They brought him back, but he was already brain dead. And so he died from a heart attack. He was a cancer. He was a terminal cancer patient. But our expectation was, well, maybe he'll make it maybe he'll be able to make it to my son's wedding. But he died suddenly, and I was in shock. I could not believe it. All right, even though he had been given 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the time was, I can't remember now. All right. So many times you will be in disbelief, whether it's sudden or it's anticipatory. All right. It's anticipated because the doctor is given so many time, or the hospice people say so many days, so many weeks, a couple hours from now. You're still in disbelief, many of us. And then there's confusion. Okay. We're talking about cognitions. We're talking about the way that we think, thought patterns. Confusion. Many new bereaved people say their thinking is very confused. They can't seem to order their thoughts. I can testify to that. You are not your own at that time. You are not thinking. You are confused. All right. They have difficulty concentrating, or they forget things. I can testify to that because, you know, people would tell you things. People will tell you, well, this is happening now, and this is happening, and this one is coming in town, and they're going to stay here, and, you know, but you don't remember. You do not remember because you're confused and you're so easily to forget. I think you get amnesia. There's a type of amnesia that sets in. And I know this is true because there are phone numbers that I had memorized from when I was young and young adult, older adult. I could remember my family's phone numbers. I could remember mine from way, way back. And then all of a sudden that just goes out of the window. That goes out of the window. You have, amnesia, you have a memory loss. And I know that I experienced some type of memory loss when my daughter died in 2010 and then my husband died in 2011. It was just so traumatic. It was so much so soon that there were things that I just put out of my mind. Could not remember them. So I had to write things down. And let me help you with this. When you experience the death of a loved one and you're preparing for the funeral, it is so, from the time you hear about it, it is so important that you get a helper. It can be your sister. It can be an in-law. It can be a friend. But it is so important that you have a helper, someone with you that's going to be your scribe, somebody that can write down, things that you need to remember. You have to go to the undertaker at, on this day, at that time. And then you got to go back on this date and that time, because you know you got to take your the clothing to the undertaker so that he can dress your loved one, and then you need to be at church at this time, and then you know Uncle Joe and Aunt Sally, they're coming on Southwest and they're going to be staying at this hotel, so you need to give them, you know, directions to get. You just can't remember all that stuff. You can't. You got to have a script. Where are you going to get your flowers? Are you going to have the wake and the funeral on the same day? What are the hours of the wake? What are the hours? You need a scribe, because people are going to be calling you all the time. If you don't have it, yes, you will be overwhelmed. Yes, you will be confused. You need a secretary. You need a scribe, somebody that's going to shadow you, somebody that's going to walk you through that whole week, all right, leading up to the funeral and post funeral. You need somebody to help you with the cards, the thank you cards, all right? Trust me. And I've written about this in a PDF. There's certain things you need to have in place when somebody dies, and a scribe is one of them. Okay, so here's an example of what confusion could look like. All right, this is from my book. This is from the author. He gave an example of how we can be confused. He said he once went out for a social evening in Boston, and he took a cab home. He said, I told the driver where I wanted to go and sat back while he proceeded down the road. A little later, he asked me again where I wanted to go. I thought maybe he was a new driver and didn't know the city, but he commented to me that he had a lot on his mind. A little bit later, he asked me again where I wanted to go, and then he apologized and said that he was feeling very confused. He said, the author said, this happened over and over. It happened several times. And then finally, he decided it wouldn't hurt to ask him what was on his mind. And he told me that his son had been killed the week before in a traffic accident. So look, you don't know what is on people's minds. You know, he could have ended up someplace, you know, and had to pay a whole lot of money, extra money, because the person was confused and they were in some type of trauma, some type of crisis, and they just keep going around and around and around, taking them to places he didn't even ask, and just had to keep asking them, what did you say? What did you say? Where did you say you want to go? See, that's why we have to be people of discernment. That's why we have to be people of compassion and really learn how to listen when you're in situations like that. You need to learn how to listen to people. Sometimes it's not what they say, it's what they do that we need to be cognizant about, because confusion and forgetfulness is one of those things that's you know, that we encounter. Matter of fact, let me get back to myself, because I don't tell anything that I have not experienced. I remember, because my husband died the weekend of Storm Alfred. It was October 28th is actually the day he died. And that we were in the midst of Storm Alfred that lingered for a couple of days because there was a terrible ice storm. It just came out of nowhere. Remember, this is October. Normally in Connecticut, we don't get ice and snow until like late November and December, but this was a freak storm. And ice, we had an ice storm. Ice was weighing down. The leaves were still on the trees. The ice and the snow was weighing down the trees. And yet I had to conduct this funeral during this terrible ice storm. There were lots. Electricity was out at my house, all over Connecticut, at least Greater Hartford, Connecticut. Lights were out. Nobody had electricity. And yet I had to get this funeral together. And so the place where the funeral director did his business, they did not have any lights either on Granby Street. And so they had a place off campus on Windsor Avenue that I was instructed to go there so I can meet with them, bring the insurance papers and bring the clothes and everything like that. Because Fuqua did not have any electricity. So I went there and I met with the funeral director, and I needed to get my hair done. I'm like, how am I going to get my hair done? I need, we think like that. Women do think like that. I had to get my hair done. And luckily there was a woman that was in that building, and she was doing somebody's hair. She had lights. And after I finished talking to the director, where they were located, I asked her if she would do my hair, if I could come back later and she would do my hair. And she said, yes, she would. Make a long story short, I did go back. She did do my hair. And as I was leaving, the funeral director gave me some information about how much it was going to cost to put the, to put the obituary in the Hartford Current. And when he told me it was such a ridiculous amount of money for just a little snippet, I got what, like $500-600, and that was on my mind. So I got in my car, and I was going to have to make a U-turn, because this was in Windsor, make a U-turn, go back to Bloomfield, because one of my windshield wipers broke off. And so I'm driving towards going down Windsor Avenue, but I came to a light, and I had to make a turn, a left-hand turn, and go back towards Bloomfield. Well, most of the lights were out, but this light in Windsor happened to be on. The light was green. Okay, we're talking about confusion here, right? We're talking about being confused. The light was green, but I am seeing in my mind that the light is red, or that there is no, because most of the lights, from where I was coming from Bloomfield, everything, they had stop signs in the road because all the lights were out. In my mind, I see the light is green, but I also know that if I take a left turn, I got to wait for the oncoming traffic to clear before I can turn. Well, I know all this in my mind, but I was confused. So I turned right in front of an oncoming car. They had the right of way. I did not. And right behind this car that I turned in front of, there was a police car right behind me. And I said to myself, I don't know why I thought this. I said to myself, as I'm making the turn and I see the car coming, I'm either dead or I got a ticket. I was able to turn my car. The car hit me, but I was able to go up into a little grove of trees and get out of its way. But the police car pulled right up beside me. Ma'am, can I have your license, please? And I just started bawling. I just started crying, explaining to him, that my husband had just died and yada, yada, yada. But he still gave me a ticket. I was confused. And my girlfriends, my prayer partners had told me, if you got to go out, make sure you call me. Hello. I don't want you going out there by yourself. Wherever you need to go, call one of us and we'll drive you. Me, oh, I can handle it. I'm good. No, do not drive yourself when you're taking care of business for the funeral. Let somebody drive you, especially in the middle of a severe snowstorm where most of the lights are out, because you're not thinking. You're not yourself. You are confused. I could have died in that car accident, leaving my son and my grandchildren. Well, I have one granddaughter, leaving my granddaughter without a grandmother, leaving my son without a mother and a father. So confusion is real. Forgetfulness is real. It's real, y'all. You got to pay attention. When people want to help you through the initial stages of grief, learning about the loss, you better let them do it, because they know better than you. Get somebody to be your scribe. Get somebody to drive you around. Get somebody that you can be accountable to. They know your goings, and they will assist you. Don't be so prideful that you say no, like I was. Oh no, I can handle that. That stoic kind of behavior. No, I needed somebody to be with me at that time. I just thought I had it all together, but I didn't. I almost killed myself, totaled my car. Okay. Totaled my car. And my son had to come down and take me to Hartford Hospital. My prayer partners came down there too. My mother had just come into town. My son didn't even tell her that I had been in this car accident. But thanks be to God, I hurt a finger on my left hand, and I had to wear a sling. I think it was on my right hand, actually. Had to wear a sling at the funeral the next day, because that's what the funeral was, that next day. So make sure that you allow people to help you. So we talked about disbelief. We talked about confusion. Do we have time to talk about one more? Let's talk about preoccupation. Preoccupation can be obsessive thoughts about the deceased. That's when you're thinking about them 24/7 and you cannot sleep at night because you're preoccupied thinking about the death of the deceased. These often include obsessive thoughts about how to recover the lost person. Okay? How to recover the lost person. Listen, you cannot bring back the dead. Once they're gone, they are gone. All right? Sometimes preoccupation takes the form of intrusive thoughts or images. Watch this, images of the deceased suffering or dying. That happened to me with my daughter because she died from such a devastating type of cancer, pancreatic cancer, where she was sick all the time. She was in pain 24/7. And after she passed, I just kept thinking about my beautiful daughter with her beautiful long hair. She had to have her hair cut all the way off. She had gone from like just having a baby, because she died about 15 months after having a baby, going from like 200 pounds down to like 115 pounds. I kept seeing that image over and over. I seen her devastated body, seeing the chemo, how it affected, her complexion. And it was just haunting me, preoccupied with her suffering or her dying. And so in a Harvard child bereavement study, surviving parents with the highest levels with whom they had a highly conflicted in relationship. So people who've been in a relationship where the relationship was highly conflicted, meaning there was some abuse, physical, mental abuse. Those are the people that have this preoccupation with seeing their loved one suffering or dying. And then there's something called rumination. Rumination, rumination. Rumination is another form of preoccupation. Here's an example. People engaging in ruminative coping think, watch this, they think persistently and repetitively about how bad they feel about the circumstances that led up to their feelings. So when you're in rumination, that's a type of preoccupation where you are engaged in ruminative coping. Ruminative coping. Ruminative coping, when you think persistently, and you think it repetitively about how bad you feel about the circumstances that precipitated your feelings. So if you're feeling bad, you're feeling guilty, you're feeling ashamed for feeling the way, it's called rumination. You're overzealous and preoccupied with thinking about how bad you feel about the way you feel. Okay, how bad you feel about the way you feel. All right, so there's preoccupation when you're overly zealous, overly obsessive in your thoughts about that person, especially how to recover the lost person. You can never recover them. Once they're gone, they're gone. Or preoccupation takes the form of thoughts or images of the deceased and how they suffered, how they changed in character, how they changed physically. Even if you were in the room when they died, you have preoccupation about seeing them take their last breath. I was in the room when my husband died, and I'll tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. We held hands, and I'm looking at the monitor, it's just barely going up and down. And then all of a sudden you see a straight line. Sometimes you dream about that. Sometimes you obsess about that. Sometimes you're preoccupied with thoughts of seeing that line, that line, flat line, and knowing that he or she has taken their last breath. It's more than a notion, y'all. All right. So we talked about preoccupation, we talked about confusion, and we talked about disbelief. These are all patterns that mark the experience of grief. Certain thoughts are common, especially in the early stages of grieving, and usually disappear after a short time. But sometimes your preoccupation, sometimes your disbelief and your confusion can last beyond a normal period of time. When it does, it can trigger, it can lead to depression or anxiety. So then you leave the realm of normal grief counseling over into the realm of grief therapy, where other professional mental health care workers, all right, have to, deal with you in a different way. All right. Deal with you in a different way. Deal with you in terms of anxiety and depression. And they have a battery of assessments that, they will have to use. They have a different approach, than what I would use as a grief counselor for normal grief reactions, normal physical sensations, normal cognitive awareness and thinking. Okay, so that's it for today. Now, I'm not finished with that in that area, because then we want to talk about also, we talked about cognition, which has to do with thought processes, disbelief, confusion, preoccupation. The last two we're going to talk about, and not today, I'm going to come back and talk about a sense of presence and hallucinations. All right, a sense of presence and hallucinations. All of these come under the category, another category of physical sensations, thought patterns. And after that, these are thought patterns, preoccupation, physical, a sense of presence, hallucinations. These are thought patterns. And then we're going to go into behaviors. Okay. There's certain behaviors associated with grief and loss, but we haven't gotten there yet. We have two more to talk about: sense of presence and what all of that means, and hallucination. All right. I will be back, and it probably would be a pre-recorded broadcast on the next go round. So please share, because sharing is caring. Look at the banner at the bottom. It shows you how you can contact me. I'm Lydia Ford. The name of my grief counseling service is Grace to Win, because I see you as a winner. Your grief, your purpose is never tied to anything that you lost, any person, place, or thing that you lost. No, we can't look in the rear view mirror. We have to look straight ahead, because your future is better. I don't want you just to survive. I don't want you just to cope with these different maladies. I want you to win. I want you to thrive. I want you to have a different type of relationship moving forward with that person that is no longer here. I help you to do the grief work, because you got to do the work, but I provide the skills and the strategies to help you put in the work, because I see you in your future and you are looking so much better. Okay. This is Lydia Ford, The Grace to Win, www.thegracetowin.com. And you can have a free 30-minute consultation to see whether or not you're a candidate for grief counseling, or if you know someone that you believe is a candidate, they can get a 30-minute free consultation. There are different packages available on my website. You can, you might need three months, you might need 6, you might need a whole year, but we won't know that until we talk and dialogue and see what will best fit, what kind of package would best fit your needs, or someone that you love that you may recommend their needs. All right, peace out. I will see you again as we come back and talk about sense of presence and hallucinations. And those come under the category of cognition or thought processes. Again, we talked about disbelief, confusion, preoccupation, and the last two in the area of cognition, thought patterns, is sense of presence and hallucinations. See you later.